Good afternoon. This is the JP Dinnell podcast, episode 59. I am JP Dinnell, and as always, I have Lucas with me. Today, we have the honor of sitting down with our first international guest. This gentleman flew here to the DFW area for the Echelon Front FTX 15 that we just had. I actually met him a couple of years ago. And we've been in contact over Instagram for a little over a year. And it was awesome to be able to actually sit down, spend a little time with them in person before we kicked off the FTX on Sunday. We actually were able to sit and talk for a little bit on Sunday before we kicked off the classroom portion. And then just the 2 days of the field training exercises that we're running here in the Dallas-Fort Worth areas for our individual FTX that we do. So he flew in from Australia, a 17.5-hour flight from Australia. And I was fired up that he was coming out here for it. And it was really cool because he also came here on Saturday, so that, and we'll talk about this later, Sunday he would be able to go to church here at Lucas's church. But what was really impressive to me for over those 2 days of the FTX was just watching him interact with people, watching him conduct the missions as a shooter, as a leader, as a mid-level leader within the FTX, and just watching his ability to adapt and grow every single FTX. He's a business owner, he's a husband. He's just a very impressive human that I've gotten to watch and know. And so the fact that we get to sit down and learn from David, I'm looking forward to it. David, how are you doing, man?
Very well, mate. Very well.
Let's go. First international guest from Australia. What's up, Lucas?
What's going on, gents?
How are you doing?
I'm pretty stoked about today, getting to talk to David about some stuff from the FTX. And I am making sure that I'm not in violation of any of my NDA things that I had to sign in order to have David here. So it's very exciting.
All right. How do you want to kick it off? What was, we'll start with, where do you live right now and where did you grow up? And talk to us a little bit about life growing up. What was it like in Australia as a boy?
Yeah. So look, I grew up in rural Australia. It was on the coast, about 3 hours east of Melbourne. It's the southernmost tip of mainland Australia. Around a place called Wilson's Promontory, and it's incredibly beautiful naturally. The mountains rise straight up out of the sea. There's just surf beach after surf beach after surf beach. Like where I grew up, it's mum and dad's place. My father used to go down there surfing in like the 70s with his mates. So they all ended up buying different houses down there. So we basically grew up, just surfing in the summer and getting dirty and burning things in the winter, and it was we grew up on the land.
Sounds like Jocko's kids in San Diego.
yeah. Like school was 80 kilometers away, 50 miles.
Okay.
Yeah, our nearest neighbor was maybe 3 miles away. And
wait, nearest neighbor is 3 miles away?
Yeah.
That's my dream.
Yeah. So it was basically
that's too
like
close. It's awesome.
Yeah,
man.
it was like me, mum, my brother, and I, and just growing up in the natural world is beautiful.
That's cool. So what'd your dad do growing up?
So he was a plumber.
Okay.
Yeah, ran his own plumbing business.
Wow.
And my mother worked in schools. She was an integration aide. So she did about 20, nearly 30 years of helping people, kids, disabled kids or kids with just different physical needs, sort of helping them access mainstream education.
Wow, what a saint.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Was there any defining moments from your childhood that, you reflect upon or, you have taken lessons from that have helped you as an adult or that you would like to be able to pass on to your children?
Yeah, look, there's a few. One of the biggest ones is just the lessons that can be found in the natural world. My wife and I don't have kids yet. We're on that journey, but we pray that we do, and if we do, I would love to be able to raise them, particularly as their children, as much in the natural world as possible. It just teaches you so much.
When you say the natural world, you mean like out in the wilderness type of like in a rural area?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's, yeah. I mean, I I can align with that desire.
100%.
So that's what you had growing up, and you love it. You relate to it. Why do you think that's important?
I think it teaches you life lessons. Like for instance, growing up in that kind of isolation, we had to learn how to entertain ourselves. You couldn't get bored. Getting bored was just, that was the dumbest thing ever. If we were bored, we could go set something on fire. We could go cut a tree down. We could cut the tree down and then set it on fire. We could, I don't know. We could go to the beach. Like within 30 minutes of where I grew up, in the car, I could take you to somewhere that looks like you're in the Sahara. I could take you to somewhere that looks like you're in Thailand on the beaches. I could take you to somewhere that would make you feel like you're in the Jurassic. Wow. It's cool.
Yeah. So I think about what I was blessed to be able to have access to was my parents' my grandparents' property up in Northern California. Northern California is very diverse with its geography and everything else like that. California is a very diverse state with all those things. And so it was awesome. And my grandparents had 5 acres up in the foothills, and we'd go up there and we would spend the summer with them. And it was the same thing as what you're saying. And that's what I want for my kids one day. And, most likely it'll probably be my grandkids because Aiden's already 18 and the girls are going to be 13 in January. But like when we were up there, we'd just go out and, like you said, we would be chopping up firewood and we'd be building forts and, creating dams in the creek, and knowing that we couldn't leave them there because, Grandpa's going to whoop that butt if you left it. You were definitely getting spankings if you left.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. But okay.
But I would also say there's a flip side to it.
Okay.
So as a child, amazing. Not so much as a adolescent.
Okay.
Because now, you're stuck there. You want to go... You start becoming more social. You want to interact with other people your age.
That's a good balance.
Now you're stuck on your own. If I had my time over, I would have, knowing what I know now, I would have insisted my parents sent me to boarding school in the city. Because by the time I went to university, because I basically finished high school, went to university at 18, moved into what you guys would call, I suppose, a fraternity.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was my switch. I went from living on a hill with me, my brother, mum and dad, to living in basically a giant frat house with 130 other guys. And that was in a one-day switch. So it was a pretty rapid social adjustment.
Yeah, no doubt.
I bet.
They got me up to speed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you graduate, so you go to the university, and then what'd you go to the university for?
Yeah, so it changed.
Okay.
This is where... the Lord works in mysterious ways. So right through high school, I was vehement about building a career in law enforcement. I started wanting to work for the state police, and then I set my eyes on the Australian Federal Police, a bit like your FBI.
Okay.
And then by the time I graduated high school, I wanted to work for Interpol. And I had it all planned out. So I found a university course, criminology, University of Melbourne. It had a placement with ASIO, a bit like your FBI, kind of British MI5 type thing. And that was going to take me where I wanted to go. And lo and behold, during my final exams, I got glandular fever. So I ended up, doing my exams. They set up a mattress for me in the back of the exam hall and things like that. So I didn't get the score I needed to get the course I wanted. And now all of a sudden, I was like, oh, right. Well, what do I do now? And what was funny was, there's something beautiful about the naivety of youth. And I just emailed the Australian Federal Police. I'm like, hey, I'd really like to work with you. I wanted to do this course. What course would you recommend instead? Because I can't do this one. And they actually emailed me back. I shot them an email from, some weird Hotmail that you create back in the day. Yeah. You know what they were like.
Oh, yeah. You thought it was...
Yeah. Who's this guy? Yeah, and they actually...
stud.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And, they emailed me back. And they were like, don't stress. Life experience is important. Maybe check out, economics or finance. So I'd never studied economics or finance. So I just opened up the book back then and I literally found a course called Economics and Finance. I'm like, done. And
That's awesome.
yeah.
All right, so you're going to school for that, and then you decide you also want to be able to continue to serve in some fashion. And so, what led you into the military?
Yeah, so I started working in the corporate world while I was still at uni. I got picked up fairly young, and to begin with, it was twofold. First off, I was a little bit understimulated in the corporate world. I wanted some challenge. And the other part, that there was a part of me that knew that, and this related to growing up in the country, I think, is that I felt that I was not fully developed socially or as an individual. For instance, I was 2021. I was deeply afraid of conflict, back then.
Yeah.
And I thought, when I saw the military and I was in the reserves, sort of like your National Guard.
Yeah.
And I looked at that and I was like, well, that ought to get rid of it. Let's go embrace the conflict. Let's go get yelled at and put in those situations. And it was, it worked.
Wow.
It was great.
So you had the awareness, which is very interesting, that you had enough awareness. If I'm hearing you correctly, you're telling me that you had enough awareness that you felt you weren't developed enough with your social skills because of, let's be honest, the awesome childhood that you had, but you felt like you were craving more interaction and more
Correct. Education
and more coaching on how to interact with other people, good and bad. Okay. Because you didn't have a lot of that growing up. That's what's important. Like, our kids are homeschooled, but they also do a lot. They do a lot at the church.
Yeah.
They're serving at their church. They're also doing Jiu-Jitsu, and they do a lot of different things. So they have that interaction with a bunch of different people.
And like the town I grew up in at that point in time was 600 people. So there was not the opportunity to build relationships. A big thing we learned in the FTX is around the value of building relationships. So early on in my career, I didn't quite know what I was doing. It was sort of more intuitive, but there was something inside me that was saying that, hey, in order to succeed at life, you need to be able to build relationships. And I could see that, it's not that I couldn't do that, but I didn't feel that I was being as effective as possible. I'll give you a story, like a little story about this. A really powerful lesson for me was a little bit like Moses. I ended up in the desert. So when I went to university, I did very, very, very well academically. And part of the university course, it was a 4-year course, and in your 3rd year, at that point in time, they would, the subject, you had one subject, and that was to get a job, and you actually did 1 full year of work. It was called a cooperative placement. And the university helps you get this. And I originally had an offer from the Ford Motor Company back down under. That was the first job I actually showed. I applied. It was really funny, actually, because I applied to Ford's intake, and it was the marketing intake, but they stuffed it up. I was meant to go through the finance intake, and I arrived on the marketing day, and I kind of aced it. And they were like, hey, they called me up, and they're like, oh, congratulations. But what was funny was I had my eyes on working for Porsche. And again, like, not knowing any better, I knew I had to get a placement, and I was like, why not try and get a placement at Porsche? So I went to the motor show one time down in Melbourne, when they still had a motor show, met a guy at Porsche, and I was like, hey, I'd really like to work for you. Like, is there someone, I could send my resume to or whatnot? And it was like, yeah, actually, there's this guy. And he gave me the name and an address. I'm like, okay. So for the next 20 weeks, I'm not kidding, for the next 20 weeks, I sent this guy a letter and a copy of my resume every week until I got a response. And 20 weeks later, I actually got a letter from Porsche basically saying like, hey, stop sending us the stuff. But but I was stoked just to get a response. But what was funny, what was so funny, right, and I'll get to my Moses part, I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
But
It's a great story so far.
But I get this job offer from Ford, 19, 20, something like that. I should be really stoked about that. Get the call. Yeah, hey, we'd
So
like
you're
to.
saying 19, 20, like when you're 19 or 20 years old?
Yes.
Not 2019.
Correct.
Earlier when you said 21, you meant like conflict when you were 21 years old.
Yes, correct.
Okay, I just want to clear that up because I'm like, you were still afraid of conflict in 2021. That's unique because
No.
Anyways,
I should have clarified.
No.
Yeah.
That's on me to
Yeah.
ask those questions and make sure that we're following along. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was so funny was I got the call from Ford, and it was one of those little nudges. I don't know where it comes from. I think there's something godly about it. Like he puts you on a path, you know. And I said to the lady at Ford, I was like, hey, can I just take some time to think about this? And she was like, yep, cool. And I put down the phone, and I was like, you know what? Stuff it. I picked up the phone and I called Porsche, and I knew this. I had the guy's name. Mm-hmm. I get to reception, and my heart's like pounding. You know, I'm like, what am I doing? You know, and I was like, hey, my name's David. Could I speak to so and so? And she puts me through. I'm like, oh crap. I'll never forget it. He picks up the phone. I'm like, oh hi. Hi. My name's David. I'll never forget. I'm like, it was literally, hi, my name's David. I'm the guy who sent you all those letters. And he laughed. And he's like, what can I do for you, David? And it's like, well, I just said straight up, I was like, hey, I've just been offered a job at Ford, but I'd really prefer to work for you. And he stopped for a moment. And he said, what are you doing Thursday? I was like, nothing. You know? He's like, why don't you come down to the showroom? I'd love to talk to you. So he's like, okay, cool. So I actually came down to the showroom, and he sat me down, and we spoke for about 2 hours, and we looked through all the cars and everything, and he showed me around, and he was like, look, you know, looking at your records here, you don't need to worry about working for us. And frankly, we're only 20 people at this point in time. Like there just isn't space. I'd actually love to bring you on, but there's no business case for it. So, you know, I appreciate it, but that's not going to happen. And frankly, you don't need to worry about working for us, because the way you're going, hey, one day you're probably going to be able to come in here and just buy it, you know. So just chill. But he told me, he was like, don't take the job offer at Ford. He was like, Ford will pigeonhole you into a role. And he recommended to me that I try and find somewhere small that would actually allow you to explore multiple things, where you would be exposed to things, you would have to be responsible, and you couldn't hide. And he said, when you're starting out in your career, that is an excellent thing to do, because you get maximum exposure and responsibility. And so I was like, okay, cool. Hey, Ford, sorry, rejected. And this is where I get to the desert. Out of my arrogance of being like getting the first job getting an offer for the first job I showed up for, and, you know, I aced it even when they set it up wrong, and so on and so forth. And then, hey, I met the guy at Porsche, and he told me to. I got rejected by maybe the next 50 companies I went to. Like, it was brutal. And I ended up being the last domestic student. So international students couldn't get a job because of their visa requirements, and they had a special program. But everybody who was a citizen, like, would get a job. I was the last one, and I had 1 week left. And that was my time in the desert. That destroyed me. Like, you know, the Israelites had to have something removed from them coming out of slavery in Egypt before they could go to the Promised Land, and it was very similar. It was brutal, but I wouldn't take it back.
Oh, yeah, I was going to ask, would you take it back, and if not, what'd you learn from that? Because this sounds like a pretty defining moment.
Oh yeah, it was applied humility.
Okay, good.
Like it was forcing humility down your throat, you know.
Oh man.
And I needed that.
Yeah.
I really needed that, and it set me up.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
That's I don't know of many people that could take that much rejection. because we live in a society where people don't actually have to endure that much rejection. People just assume that, and I know we'll get into this, and the reason why you have your business is to help people with the finances and understanding the numbers aspect of the business. But most people don't have to endure that much rejection.
Yeah. Man, I didn't have a choice. Because I didn't have a retreat. My retreat was back to the country. And as beautiful as that place is, I desperately wanted to escape it.
Makes sense.
The opportunities to... there was something in me that said I wanted more out of life.
Okay.
Because basically down there, you're either... and there is nothing wrong with this. This is not a judgment call. This is a personal thing. Like, you know, you're basically... the main options are you're working in retail, you're working in agriculture, like you're a farmer or working on farms, or you're working for the government in healthcare, education.
Yeah.
You could maybe get a job at a bank, supermarket, things like that, but it's fairly limited.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, I want more than that.
Yeah.
You know?
And yeah, to reiterate your point, there's nothing wrong with those industries. We need those industries.
100%.
They're very important industries, and those industries are a lot of your clients.
Yeah.
And those are the people that you like to be able to help out and help them grow their businesses. But what's cool is what I like, David, is you recognized that it wasn't for you, so you went out to pursue what you were drawn to.
Correct.
You didn't settle. How often do you see people, or better question, how often in life have you met people that just settled for something because they just thought it was just what they're supposed to do, or, you know, I mean.
Yeah, frankly, I think you see it everywhere.
Yeah.
And look, it's for different reasons, and again, I don't pass judgment on people for that.
Yeah.
There's certain circumstances, and sometimes there's different priorities that people have in their lives. But for me, at that point in time, you know, my parents instilled in me a belief that I could do anything that I set my mind to.
That's awesome.
And they wanted me to aim high.
That's good.
So
That's what good parents are supposed to do.
yeah.
And one day, whenever that timing is right for you and your wife with the Lord, like, you'll understand that. Like, when you have, you know, your kids and you're raising kids, you know, and it's an incredible thing. That's what's really cool about being a parent is parents want their kids to succeed more than they have succeeded themselves. You know, similar to what we were talking about at the FTX when I was, you know, bringing up the legacy play during the debriefs. You know, that's what we did in the SEAL teams is we had that legacy mindset of leave it better than you found it. And it's what my parents instilled into us because that's what I saw my parents doing. And that's what you saw your parents doing as well. Yeah. So let's talk about what you were doing in the military and, you know, some other opportunities opened up for you.
Yeah. So we were talking about this in the car. So yeah. So I was doing, I was attempting to be trained as an infantry platoon commander in the Australian Army, and I say that because for the 3 years I was in, it was, you know, the decision of it ain't up to you, but in 3 years they changed the training program, the focus of the training 3 times. So when I went in, it was about combat. It's about at that moment we were engaged. Australia was engaged with with coalition forces.
What year was this?
This is 2007.
Yep.
So, you know, Iraq, Afghanistan, it's a combat role. Okay, cool.
You guys were big in Afghanistan, I believe, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
And so we had several briefings in our unit back from guys who had come out of Afghanistan. So year 1, hey, it's a combat focus. Year 2, the government decides that no, actually, we're not going to focus on combat. We're going to do it on civilian operations. Riot control, helping out with bushfires, natural disasters, so on and so forth. Okay, cool. Totally different training cycle. So you start right from the get-go again. And then year 3, they switch it back to combat. And the whole thing restarts. So I qualified as a soldier, but not actually as an officer. And then at that point in time, I was trying to pursue an employment opportunity overseas, and I didn't have a return date, so I discharged. Because I couldn't tell the military when I was actually coming back to Australia.
Got it.
which is a condition that makes you discharge.
Yeah. And then what got you into being a male model?
Yeah, so
I had to bring that up.
yeah.
I love
Slide
this.
that one in there. So yeah,
the
what
word
was
Zoolander is going in the title for this, regardless of how this story turns out.
Yeah. So look, I had a girlfriend at the time who had done a little bit of that stuff, and she said to me, she was like, "Hey, you could do modeling," and I was like, whatever, like, yeah, okay. And yeah, she actually took me to a runway show, and I was kind of like, oh, maybe I could. So yeah, I actually like Googled it, and it turned out that like there was this training course, as silly as that sounds, that was like in Melbourne, and I showed up there and actually did that with them, and they kind of had like it sounds so silly, but they had like a graduation runway show, and they bring agencies there along, and I got picked up by one of the agencies there, and it was pretty funny. Like you just don't know who you meet in life. Like that little modeling course, one of the instructors in that, she was best mates with Kate Moss. So like there's 1 degree of separation.
That's crazy.
Which is just wild. And yeah, so I like, it sounds fancier than it is. I never did anything. I had like 2 little paid gigs. It was over a year while I was in at the same time as doing the reserves, but the boys in the unit loved it.
I was going to say, I'm sure the
It was
boys.
No doubt.
Hilarious.
I had a buddy that I went through buds with that was a male model as well, and he was actually in it. When you watch the movie Zoolander at the end, if you watch that, he's in that movie as a male model.
Ben Wallach?
No.
Sorry, Ben. That was unnecessary.
I mean, Ben could have been a male
Yeah.
model. No. So, but that industry led you to meet your wife, correct?
Yeah, in a roundabout way. So, yeah. What was interesting was, like, to get to my wife, I still had to go through some other industries.
Okay.
So I was working in the bank. That was my main role. And what was so interesting is that I set my eyes on the bank, and I wanted to work there.
Doing what at the bank?
So I was in private bank.
Okay.
So to be a client, I was 23, and to be a client of mine, you had to have $100 million cash. That was the minimum threshold. Now, to achieve that level at 23 is outstanding. It was a phenomenal opportunity, and it was everything that I was aiming for. And I hated it. Like, I was, at that point in my life, it was the strangest thing, because I had seen, on one hand, it was this crazy dichotomy. On one hand, I had achieved everything I had set out to do, escape the country, set myself up. You could take that kind of career anywhere in the world. Great. I'm doing it at the highest level. But I hated it. And I was climbing a ladder that was ultimately up against the wrong wall. And I got to a pretty dark place, because I defined myself at that point in my life. I defined myself by my work. And that's not a good thing to do. No. Because that can so easily be taken away from you. And yeah, so I came to the realization, I'm not kidding, I came to the realization that, like, look, I got to leave here, or I'm going to end up leaving this earth, And so I quit the bank, and not knowing what to do, I went and met a mate in Europe who was hanging out there, and one thing led to another, and I discovered super yachts as an industry down in the Mediterranean, and someone told me about it. I went down there, checked it out. Bit of a recon exercise down there. Try and meet some people, see what it's like.
Yeah, but let's back up. You left some cool parts out of this, and I think our listeners, people need to hear these things.
Sure.
What I don't want is someone to hear this and be like, "Oh, that must be nice. Must be nice. Must be nice." Like, you're doing all this stuff. 23, which, by the way, congratulations. That's incredible to
Pretty
reach.
stellar.
To reach that level at the age of 23 in that industry is unreal. But you, again, being very self-aware, this is what I keep picking up on, and which I also saw in you at the FTX, is your awareness and self-awareness. But you're recognizing, okay, hey, my image is in this. It shouldn't be here. I'm at the point where I don't want to be alive anymore, because that's how depressed you were. recognize that's not the path or the answer. And so you leave that, you sell all your things, correct?
Yeah, so I went to Europe, checked it out, saw the boats there. I was like, right, adventure travel money. And it was, I think I really do feel like you could just feel it. It felt like something divine just trying to point you in this direction.
Yeah.
But sometimes like it's very direct. It's like God grabbing you by the shoulders and like, mate, it's here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I met some people there, figured out I could actually do it. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So yeah, came back to Australia, did a couple of training courses, 2 weeks of training. That's it. I'd never even been on a boat before.
But you want to go work on a yacht. I love it.
Yeah. So it's
super
great.
yacht.
It's a great plan.
Yeah.
So
It actually is.
yeah. So when the season there kicks off about April. So yeah, come April, I basically sold everything I had, which wasn't much. Bought a one-way ticket, and just
What were your living arrangements for a while? Were you sleeping in like a Connex box or something similar, you said?
yeah. So when I quit the bank and went and I had a mate in Amsterdam at the time. So him and I ended up living in a shipping container in the port in Amsterdam. I didn't know that until I got there, but we kind of winged it. And I got there and we literally pulled a bed out of a dumpster and washed it, and that was my bed for like 2 weeks. And to get around, I bought they call it like a junkie bike in Amsterdam. You kind of buy it for about €50. It's someone else's bike. But what was so funny, like my mate had this really cool bike, and just in the 2 weeks I was there, that bike got stolen, resold back to someone, stolen again, and then he ended up buying his own bike back off a junkie. So it was like circle of life, It was hilarious. But yeah, so I went from private bank to shipping container to back to Australia, and then I departed Australia to try and work on these super yachts, and I got there, and I did a lot of sort of pre-training as much as I could in Australia, and I got a job there, and it was on this magnificent boat. It was the largest of its kind in the world. Old school racing schooner. It used to race against Britannia. So this thing was like 19th, it's 19th century design. Wow. And it was beautiful. And what was so cool was I'd never been on a boat before. This was like getting your learners, you're just learning to drive, and the first car you get put in is an F1. Because there is nothing bigger, and this races in the top echelons. There are certain yacht races for classic yachts, and this competes in them at the highest level. So there is nowhere higher to go, and that's where I ended up starting. But the reason they gave me the job was not only relationships. Yeah. And we can get into that.
Yeah, please.
But what was so cool was the first mate looked at my resume, and the fact that I had military experience. And he was like, oh, you'll listen to orders. And the fact I had no idea what to do was good.
Yep.
He's like, cool, you got a clean slate. So if you can get on with us, if we can have a relationship with you and you just like kind of do what you're told, like, we're good.
Yeah.
That's all we need. I'm like, cool, good to go.
Which is what we need from people when they first start off in regards, because I don't want somebody to hear that the wrong way and be like, yeah, if my people just do what I told them to, that's great. But when you don't have a skill set, you need to be humble, coachable, and teachable. And that's what you were. Yeah. You were humble, you're coachable, and teachable, meaning that when somebody says, hey, this is what I need you to do, you weren't going to defy them or push back or question it. You were going to do it knowing that they were training you, correct?
Correct.
They weren't just telling you go do something without training. They were training you. They're providing you with the tools and resources, for the most part, I'm willing to bet, to go out there. And there is a healthy amount of pushing back and asking questions when you don't know what to do and you don't want to make a mistake.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah, and then so I did a season on the yachts, ended up coming back to Australia to take up a financial director role with an advertising agency. And while I was at that agency, we had an intern who said, hey, come along to a runway show. I'm like, yeah, cool, I'll come along. And lo and behold, I see my wife at my future wife at this runway show. Sort of walked in there, we were late, and I'll never forget, like, I sort of saw her framed in between the cameras and the lights, and I was like, who the hell is that? You know? And then show's over. She was there because one of her friends was modeling there. And I ended up talking to her. It was so funny because I ended up talking to her friend. And I was, you know, she knows, like her friend knows. So I was probably trying to like tune her friend, you know, as you do. And then she walks up and I'm like, oh, I need to like figure out a way to stop talking to this one and start talking to this one, you know. But yeah, what was so funny was like I got her number. It was cool. And you know, what was so funny was I got her number, as I found out later. You know, I got her number because she thought I was gay, you know. And she
wanted someone to go shopping with.
She wanted someone to go shopping with, you know.
It's only
So
one reason
that would also keep her safe. You know, she's like, oh,
Yeah.
this is like a win-win.
yeah, it's a win-win. It's obvious. And what was so funny was her friend, because they both speak Russian, and her friend was trying to convince her that I wasn't gay and was actually interested. And she was arguing back like, no, there's no way he would be interested in me. Like, come on, you know. And lo and behold, you know.
And because they're speaking Russian, which can be an aggressive language, you thought
100%.
You thought they were fighting?
Yeah. Yeah. I had told myself this story that, hang on, I've pushed it too far and she's got a boyfriend and I've upset her. You know, that was the story I was telling her. And I was like, even though I had her number, I was like, I'm probably going to leave this one alone, you know. And then...
Wow.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was so funny.
How long have you and your wife been married?
We got married in 2014. I had to think about that.
Yeah,
for a second. Yeah, 2014.
Good.
So 10 years married, and nice. We met in 2011.
That's cool. So 3 years of dating and engagement, and you get married.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Tell us about your business. Why'd you start your business? You kind of got painted into the corner because of the awesome lifestyle that you lived in regards to all these cool different things, but you felt like you kind of painted yourself in the corner.
Very much so. So two things on this that I really want to share. So the first one is a learning that I discovered. So I finished up at the advertising agency as that financial director. I was 28. So I started my business at 28. That was my next role. And I've been doing that since. But something that was so interesting that I never anticipated and nobody told me was when I was at the bank. So going back a little bit, when I was at the bank, my first role was working in strategies, which was basically like running numbers to help inform the decisions of the directors and board of the bank, which is a fantastic role. So I got to know the upper echelon of the bank. Okay, cool. Fast forward, I quit, go on a yacht, come back. One day I am skateboarding to the office, just jeans and a t-shirt, summer, cool, just skateboarding to the ad agency, loving life. And lo and behold, standing in a suit there on the road is the guy I used to report to at the bank. And I was like, his name was Mark. And I was cruising by. And I was like, hey, Mark. You know, how's it going? He's like, he's looking. He's like, oh, Dave. I'm like, yeah. You know, so I hold up. You know, he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, mate, I've just come off these yachts. I'm skateboarding to work at this ad agency. And he's like, you just came off yachts? And he's like, yeah, you know, after the bank, I went to the Mediterranean, blah, blah, blah. He's like, man, I got to hear about this. Here's my business card. Like, let's catch up for a coffee. Now, at that time, he had moved from one bank to head up a major investment bank in Melbourne. So I'm like, yeah, cool. Well, I'll catch up for a coffee. So I catch him for a coffee. We go to, you know, big corporate tower, right up the top. Catch the lift, yep, cool. We catch up for a coffee. He's like, tell me about what you did, you know. So, well, you know, da-da-da-da-da. And he offered me a job there and then on the spot to come and be a private banker to like dentists and surgeons. And that job, so I was on a certain wage at the ad agency, and he offered me instantly, without any application, documentation, anything, a role that was 4 times the base salary of the ad agency with an uncapped bonus. Yeah, he's like, and he said to me, he's like, I want someone who is willing to do what you did. And I never understood that there are certain people that would understand the value of you just pursuing. There is a value in you going out and aggressively pursuing the adventure of your lifetime. And there is a value in that. And it leapfrogged, because within 2 years, I went from graduate to because I sold everything and went and jumped on the yachts and seemingly did something stupid. Actually, my earning capacity from a salary perspective increased from a graduate level 8 times in 2 years. That's an 8-fold increase by going and doing something seemingly that everyone in the bank told me was a dumb idea.
Yeah.
I'm like,
because people, well, this isn't a bad thing, like you said. Like we don't judge people off of like their idea,
No.
but there is a thought process behind playing it safe.
yeah,
That's why, some people will prefer security over the ability to make more money. Because that's just the way they're wired, and they have to.
Yeah.
And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But what this guy saw in you was, I like what you said. You said aggressively pursuing, and that's what that industry needs. That's what actually companies need, and leaders need to be aggressively pursuing opportunities and everything else out there, and that's what you're doing. And so you got this job, 4x what you were making. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. And then, I turned that down to stay at the agency, and basically I ended up working with the guys there at the agency. We turned that business around, and basically I put myself out of a job. It was sort of mission accomplished. And I asked those guys there who ran the agency, I was like, look, I was just straight up with them. I was like, hey, what used to be a 5-day-a-week job, we can kind of do in 1 day a week now. So, it's 2 options here. Like, I could either leave, or like, would you be open to giving me equity? Because that would work. And they were, no, we don't want to do that. That's cool. No stress.
Yeah.
So, well, how about this? How about I fire myself, start my own business, and you guys become my first client? And that reduces the cost, and I can do this in 1 day a week, and good deal. And they're like, great, let's do that. So they then
Go ahead, please fire yourself for us.
yeah. I'm like,
you would take care of that.
So I terminated myself, wrote myself up an aggressive letter, and just terminated myself, and it was really cool. And they recommended me to a construction company, and then from there they recommended me to someone else, and so on and so forth. And I've just been doing that ever since. But I'm sorry, I didn't answer your original question. So I started a business because when I wanted to leave the ad agency, I thought I would go into management consulting, but no one would touch me, because I had this crazy resume that just made no sense. Now certain guys could see it, like the guy in the but only because they had the relationship. On paper, it makes no sense. When you see the relationship, it makes all the sense in the world.
But that's so crazy to me that people are still that close-minded to looking at those things. You would think that, I don't know. It's just crazy. Like it's because I'm spoiled with what I get to do at Echelon Front. I am exposed to so many companies throughout the year. If you really think about that, like how many different companies and personalities, because it's a numbers game now with the exposure and the different people, there's a decent amount of people that I get to talk to and interact with that are business leaders that would actually appeal to that. Like that would be appealing to them because they see, oh, this guy's doing what he wants. He's pursuing stuff. There's a difference between getting fired and or leaving something because you just don't have the ability to stick through with it. You know what I mean? Like you have to be able to see that. And I think it takes seasoned leaders to be able to understand that.
Yeah. And agreed. And what was crazy about this ad agency was I came off the boat thinking I was going to take over this thing and it's all going to be cool and it'll be cruisy.
Yeah.
Just like out at the FTX, it's hilarious. You get tasked with an objective, you come up with a plan. Like mine was classic. Well, I had the simplest plan. Just you shout, stop me if I'm getting into too much
No,
detail.
no,
but it's
you
like,
do whatever.
Hey, hit this building. And like, there it is on the map. If we just keep the river to the right side of us, we will get there.
Yeah.
Like, you even told me, like, watch out, you're gonna get lost in it. I'm like, nah, mate. It's like right there. Like, we got lost.
Yeah, what do you know, old man?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Total stuff. So yeah, I get to this ad agency thinking it's all cool, fraudulent bookkeeper. And they thought they had, I describe it as a Titanic. They had 30 people employed. They were doing world-class work. They thought they were so strong, unsinkable, cruising along. And when we looked at the financials and actually figured out what the financial reality was, they had like 7 days cash. That was it. Whoa. So we went from, this was survival. Mm-hmm. So we went from being cool, like party mode, to an instant switch to like, oh, this is like now fighting for our life. Mm-hmm. And the two guys who started it, they've been doing it for 10 years. So this was their kid. And like, okay, no one trained me for that. Yeah. So we had to figure it out. And over 2.5 years, in the beginning, their profit margin, their idea was, hey, if we don't make a profit, then we don't have to pay tax. Yeah, that was the look on my face too. Like, okay, like that's a strategy, but like, hang on, let's sit down, guys, because you got to remember these are creatives. These are world-class graphic designers, advertising guys. That's what they do. They get paid to come up with crazy ideas. Mm-hmm. So they've never been trained in the money side of things. So I was like, okay, cool. Well, let's run through it. Let's figure out actually where we are, because like you guys talk about it when it comes to navigation and trying to orientate yourself. Yep. The most important thing is like, where are you, mm-hmm. and then where is the enemy?
Yes.
So it's like, okay, where are we actually at? The truth will set you free. Mm-hmm. So our financials are a joke. Where are we actually at? What's the truth? Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Now we can name the enemy.
Yeah.
Right. This is the problem.
Yep.
Okay. Now we can start reorientating ourselves. Mm-hmm. Do we need 30 people? No. Hey, we need to make a brutal decision. We cut down to 10, and we started to figure out, like, there were projects we were doing that were just losing us money. So we cut entire divisions out, and all of a sudden, 2.5 years later, we went from 30 people to 10. Our revenue declined 10%, but our profit margin went from 2% bottom line to 25%. Mm. So it's orders of magnitude different business. And all of a sudden, what that does for the creative mind is so powerful, because we came across this really sexy mix of maximum creative control and artistic endeavor with maximum financial return. And when you combine those two and you eradicate that starving artist mentality, it was just a powerhouse, because you could start saying no to stupid briefs, and we were this tiny little agency. Like we were in charge of the re-release of the Nike Air Force One for Asia Pacific. There was like 10 of us. That was in conjunction with like Jay-Z and Beyonce. There was like 10 of us doing that. I'm like, no awesome. One told me at university. Like, I was just a kid from the country. Yeah. So no one told me at university I could apply like economics and finance to this ad agency doing this, like, the things we got paid to do. It was wild. It was wild. So we had one party. This is what we get paid to do. We had one party. So this intern and he came up with an idea. He found on eBay that you could get these old photocopiers for like $1 that people just wanted to get rid of. And I'm like, huh. So we jumped in the ute and went and picked up a whole heap of these around Melbourne for a couple of days. And then at this party, we went and hooked them up to a fax machine, and we programmed into that fax machine like all the people who like owed us money, and like the IRS and some government people and everything. We just programmed in their fax numbers. So at this party, it was a free for all. There's like 8 photocopiers that you could come up and just photocopy whatever you wanted. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You push a button, you send it to the tax office, to the people who never paid their bill.
As a photocopy party?
Oh, that was just one element of it. That was just one. So there was a section of this party where you could just like, yeah, that's what we got paid to do. So, yeah. But yeah, I left that to start my own business, and I've gone so off track. But basically, what my business does,
there is no track, which is really cool.
Yeah. No, but what my business does is basically replicate what I did at the agency.
Yeah.
To turn them around financially. But like I can't draw to save myself, right? But they could, and there was this really cool combination where we combined the two. So I now do that for. I found a really cool niche over time. It's a bit of trial and error, but basically I work with. I call them trade entrepreneurs. It's usually guys, but not exclusively. That have started a business off the back of their own trade. So there may be a plumber who started a plumbing business, or a truck driver who started a trucking business, that kind of thing.
Similar to your father?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And because he struggled with that side of things. He never finished high school. And I saw him as a little kid, like struggling with taxes and paperwork and all these things. And I wish I could help him. I remember like being so small and wishing I could help my dad, but not know how. So I tried to create a business that was like, I tried to create a business that would offer the kind of help I wish my father could have had. And now what I do is work with these guys to look after the financial side of things for their business, but not from a compliance perspective per se, really from a performance. It's working with them on their decisions, because ultimately, like, the financial results is just the output of all the decisions that they have made about their business and what they've decided to do. That creates a financial outcome. And if you can understand that and link one back to the other, you can begin making better, more powerful decisions, which increases financial performance, profitability, cash flow. They're different things, the value, and you start changing people's lives.
Yeah.
Explain
the difference between profitability and cash flow. Because a lot of people don't understand that.
Yeah, sure.
Agree? So would you agree that's like a big issue that you come across?
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
100%. So what's interesting is, like, for my clients, they are experts at what they do. Mm-hmm. So naturally, they'll start out usually like on the tools themselves. They've got a job, and then they're like, hey, I reckon I can do this. So they'll start a business. And they quickly realize that it takes more than just being good at what you actually do to run a successful business. Is in the beginning, they're actually quite successful because they have the work ethic, they can build relationships, they're good at what they do, so naturally they begin to grow. And as they begin to grow, their business becomes more and more complicated. In the beginning, what happens is they can see everything in their head because they're small enough. It's like they have centralized command through their own head.
Yeah. And that works.
It works really well. But as their business gets more and more complicated, they need to move to a decentralized command. That's a hard transition.
Yeah.
Now, if they get stuck as they're growing in that centralized command, financially what they do is they get stuck on what they see as truths that they orientate themselves, usually around sales, because that's easy to understand, and the bank balance, because they know that's true. But what happens when all of a sudden what they expect doesn't make sense? They can see increasing sales, decreasing bank balance. Hang on, what's going on here? And they'll call their accountant, and their accountant's like, well, they can't explain it to them. They don't know who to ask. I can't go to my employees because I'm going to look like an idiot, and they don't know. They can't see everything. I don't want to tell them this. They're going to freak out and leave me. They can't go to their spouse. They can't go to their mates. They're kind of stuck. And the difference there that can be really hard to understand is profitability. If you think about it this way, is income minus expenses equals profit. That's real simple math.
Yeah.
Cool. You could be $1 billion company and you'll figure that out. Cash flow is profit minus expenses creating, it is income minus expenses creating your profit. But then it's also all the movements of your assets, liability, and equity that sit on the balance sheet. And then you got to time series that out. So cash flow is 6 independent variables moving on a time series.
Okay.
You're not going to figure that out in your head. So if you're
I'm
focusing on
glad you
profit,
said that because I was like,
yeah, you just won't.
I'm sweating.
So if you're trying to figure out
What's
the
number
cash,
4?
if you're trying to figure out the cash flow impact, like I got a cash problem. Hey, I can't make payroll next week, and I don't understand why. And like, you can't make payroll. That's a death event for a business. You're done.
Yeah.
Right. That's game over. So I work with these guys to help them understand that. Hey, you're making great profit, but dude, no one's paying you on time. And you're letting them get away with that.
Yeah.
So you need to take ownership over your accounts receivable and get that cash in, because you've made the profit, but you got to bank that profit.
So can we pause real quick?
Sure.
That's when I got out and I was doing sales at a financial company. It was a factoring company. And our big clientele, which I know has bad reputation, but it can be done right. If it's done right, you're massively helping companies grow because of this reason. And so, but our main clientele was the trucking industry.
Yep.
Because they would, all right, hey, JP Dinnell Trucking goes and delivers a load to Walmart, and it's $1,000 invoice. Well, Walmart's not paying me for 60 to 75 days.
Yeah.
But if I get that invoice factored, I can have 90% of that within 60 minutes. And then the factoring company waits to get the whole 100%. And then they release the reserve, the other 10%, minus their small fee off the back end.
Yeah.
Which really helps companies grow and expand. The problem is not all those companies that are in that industry are ethical. And I recognized that very quickly. And I was like, oh, if I'm just an honest, ethical person that takes care of my customers, I'm going to do well. And I did well. And the amount of referrals that I got, bro, was unreal. And I applied the laws of combat. I know you and I have talked about it. And
Who'd have thought?
And I mentioned this at the FTX. The reason why we were able to do what we did was because of that success. So I just wanted to pause there, because what you're saying is people don't understand all those little variables will sink a company so fast.
Correct. And like, I don't know the company that you worked for, and again, this is no judgment against them, but in my experience, I would call factoring financial heroin.
Hey, whatever you were about to say, I wasn't going to be offended because I'd heard it, and I've actually heard that, because it is.
Well,
I need the money now.
Yeah, it is. It can be a drug, right? Because what you're talking about is you don't have a financing problem. You have a receivables problem. That is actually an administration problem. Now, the problem with factoring is usually in the pricing of a factoring arrangement is usually exponential if you are like, so the factoring arrangement has a price. It's usually a certain percent of the value of the invoice. Yeah, cool. Let's call it 2%. And you're expecting, let's say Walmart, you're expecting Walmart to pay you on this invoice in 60 days. Their contract says 60 days.
Yep.
Cool. So, there's what is written and then there's what's done.
Yep.
Yeah. So what happens if Walmart actually pays you in 90? Well, from the 61st day onwards, that 2% will rise exponentially. Now, what you've done is destroyed your gross profit margin, because factoring has ripped out minimum 2% off your gross profit margin, right? So if that starts rising exponentially, you're now going to need more and more and more work, which has more and more expenses to it, just to cover your butt from Walmart not paying you. And that becomes a negative, a very, very vicious negative cycle. And the natural incentive is just, hey, I can fix that by making up an invoice and just giving it to the factoring company. And I've seen clients do that.
Oh, that happened all the time.
Oh, yeah.
All the time.
Yeah. And that's where it's actually the wrong tool. No, stop, mate. This is an administration problem. You are not enforcing payment, and you're not setting up the economics of your business correctly. And if you did it correctly, you wouldn't even need to factor.
Yep. Now, what I really liked, so I quickly learned all that stuff in the industry, and that's when I recognized I was with a good company. We actually had a program where they could buy down their rate.
Yeah, cool.
And our goal was for our clients to become financially independent and not need us.
Yeah, awesome.
So, like I said, we're the unicorn.
Yeah.
But everything that you said about that industry is spot on. And there was people that would take advantage of it. It's like,
Oh, yeah.
oh, you told us that Walmart was going to pay us in 60 days. It's actually 61 days. Well, now your rate just became 2.5.
Yeah.
Oh, it's 75 days. Oh, 76 days. It now becomes 2.75. And then all of a sudden people are paying 3 to 4 to 5% on an invoice where their profit margins in that industry aren't that high.
Yeah. Now imagine you've accumulated, I don't know exactly how taxes work in America, right? But imagine you accumulated a legacy tax debt to the IRS or the ATO as it is in Australia.
Yeah, just explain to it the way it works there. So
It's probably similar in the States, but depending on the size of the business, every month, every quarter, a business has to declare to the tax office what their earnings are and what in Australia it's called GST and PAYG. Companies pay the taxes for their employees, and you need to declare that. Cool. That is then meant to be paid to the tax office. Now, if you don't have the cash, for instance, you've got the profit because you've paid the wages. So you've incurred the liability of your wages, but then your customers haven't paid you, so you don't have the cash to be able to actually pay the taxes that you owe on those wages. Even though you're profitable, you can talk to the tax office and they'll give you a payment plan to sort of manage that.
Yeah, we have
Okay,
those
cool.
here
They
in
don't
the
want to
States.
shut you down just because
Businesses and individuals can do that.
Yeah. So if that gets a little bit out of hand, which it can, because the tax office is actually pretty generous if you're working with them. And it also depends how squared away your bookkeeper is. This is the other thing. What if you incur all the liabilities and you never even lodge it to the tax office? You just never tell them. Oh, you think you're flying because you've got all this extra cash. Dude, it's not your money. It's actually your employees' money that you need to pay to the government. Now, if you incur that debt, here's where it's dangerous. It's like, let's say you have a $100,000 debt and your profit margin is 10%. We keep math real simple.
Okay.
You got to clear that debt from bottom line profits. So how much new sales do you need to make just to pay that $100,000 back? Well, it's $100,000 divided by 10%. That's $1 million in sales you now need to do. You need to find, secure, execute, and get paid on just to pay the tax office back. So now if your margin's 5%, that's now $2 million. See how vicious it is? Now, if you go and factor that $1 million and now you're killing your margin, it's an inverse relationship. Like every client we've come across where they have signed a factoring arrangement has died.
Oh.
Yeah. Because they create the condition that they can't get out of. And that's why I would call it financial heroin.
Hey, whatever, like I said, whatever you're going to say wasn't going to offend me because I knew about the industry.
Yeah.
And we definitely did it right because we helped our companies grow and a lot of our clients were able to work their way out of factoring. That was the pitch.
To be very clear, factoring has a time and a place. It is a very powerful financial tool if used correctly.
Yes.
But
if used correctly.
That's the thing. And if people don't understand what's going on in their financial reality, they can end up applying the wrong tool to the job.
Yeah.
They got an objective to hit and they send the wrong tool towards it. We saw that on the FTX.
I love that you
All
said
the time.
that. I was just getting ready to be
time.
like, hey, did you see
go
that
do
the last
this
2
thing.
days?
Maybe you don't need an aggressive posture, you know?
And guys are like, yeah, cool, got it. Hey, guys, we're going in guns a-blazing here.
Yeah,
Let's
totally.
see how this works out.
Seems like a bad idea.
Seems like a bad idea.
And maybe it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So
Okay. So when I mentioned factoring, I'm sorry, I derailed you along the path of what you were talking about within for the finances and understanding businesses. So I apologize, but
That's all right.
I just wanted to go back to what you were talking about in, you said the 6 or 5 or 6.
Six elements of cash
6
flow.
elements. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the difference there's a difference between profitability and cash flow.
Yes.
They relate, but they're different. And what happens is guys will end up understanding profit, but not cash. And that drives them insane. And there's a risk there that they'll end up growing their business out of existence because they can't control their growth and they run out of cash. Because usually what happens is aggressive financial growth sucks up cash flow. It's like a gravitational force. When Elon wants to send a rocket to space, he needs enough thrust to beat the gravitational pull of the Earth.
Okay.
Same thing financially.
All right.
As you're growing, there's going to be a cash flow drain, and you've got to try and outpace that, right, in order to be financially stable. If you can't, then you're going to need some form of debt or additional investors, which would be equity.
Yeah.
But if you resort to equity, then you're going to dilute your ownership. So, okay, trying to get the right balance there.
Yeah.
Like, even as I'm explaining it, that's a complex thing. So the art is to be like, how do you explain that? How do you explain that to someone like my father who's a plumber and never finished high school? Yeah, that's actually a design question.
Yeah, as simple
because
as
I could show him
right?
the financial statements and they could be totally true and correct.
Yeah.
And he won't get it. Now that's which means that is ineffective leadership.
Okay.
Because I'm trying to get him to make a decision here for his own good. I'm showing him information, but he can't act on that because he can't understand the information.
Okay.
So a big part of what I do, the art of it, hence the name Right Brain Insights of the company, is trying to mixing the art with the science and saying, hey, JP, like you got this beef company. Well, actually, like, hey, here's an image of your future cash flow if you don't change the way your suppliers are being paid. You're paying your suppliers too quickly, and that's killing your cash flow. So in 6 months, it's out. And
so we have the cost of buying the steers, feeding the steers, leasing, the grass where they're at, then the processing fees, and then getting all that beef. We have to do all those things before the beef even gets to our warehouse.
Correct.
And then the beef gets delivered to the warehouse, and then we have the cost of the warehouse, the internet, the electricity, all that stuff, and then it's the cost of the shipping materials.
That's your gravitational pull.
Yeah, it
so
gets
you got to
strong
beat all
quick.
That. Yeah, adds up. So being able to visualize that and help them actually see it, and what's really cool is the moment they see it, I see it in them. It's like something clicks and they're, oh, I get it. And now they can control it.
That's
It's so cool to see
That's
that.
That's got to be an awesome feeling when you're able to help show somebody that.
So we use some particular software that allows us to do that and do it in real time and actually shows their financial history. It shows past, present, and multiple futures that you can plug in. So, hey, this is where you have been, this is where you're at now, and this is where you could end up based on certain things.
Decisions,
or certain drivers, certain levers that we may or may not pull. And that's how we try and steer them towards their objective. And then a key part is also just to define their objectives. Like, hey, JP, why are you even in business? I don't care what the answer is, but what do you want to do? Like, you want to buy a fancier house? You want to sell the thing for $1 billion? You want to just put the kids through private school? You want creative control over your life because you just don't want to be like working for the man? I don't care. Tell me. And then off the back of that, we can reverse that and be like, well, based on those objectives, how much money does the business actually need to be producing to be able to send to you as the owner so that you can live the life you want to live?
Yeah.
And now that's so important because what you mix is success and fulfillment. And that's really cool because success is a science. Fulfillment is an art. And there are plenty of super success. History is littered with super successful people that killed themselves.
Yeah.
So
trying to mix the two is a big part of what we do.
Say that phrase one more time. Success is a
science.
Yep.
Right? If you do particular things, you will be successful.
Yeah. Got it.
By and large, right? I'm generalizing.
Yeah.
But fulfillment, you could be really successful and unfulfilled. And I saw that with clients in the bank. These super rich guys, they fell in one or two categories. They were either like incredibly wealthy, but incredibly happy, wonderful individuals with really solid families, and like they're doing great work in the community. And like they were awesome. Like, they were so nice to deal with. Or it was the flip side.
Yeah.
And there was almost nowhere in between. Well, like, hey, they had kids, but they were trying to get the money and they hated them. They had nothing to do with them. They got all this money in the world, but they're just miserable, And you're like, well, that ain't that interesting. It ain't about the money.
No, it's not. What do you do when you, or I guess I should ask one question before I ask this one. Have you ever, come across individuals that had businesses or business plans or just ideas that as you were like diving in and looking at the business, you're like, you're not going to make it. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
Because you have to also be able to ask yourself, like, is it worth it? Like at what
Correct.
cost? Like,
Correct.
hey, like you said, success is a science, so we can get the science to where it needs to be, but at what cost?
Yeah, correct.
And so how do you handle those situations?
Yeah, there's a lot of nuance to that, but the biggest thing I would say is that the truth will set you free. I really mean that. You got to look at it in the eye and be real with yourself about it. Like I'll tell you a story. There was, and this is just recently. I was working with two guys. They started a trade business. They were both on the tools. They started a trade business 5 years ago. They had $800 between them. When I met them, they were doing $32 million in revenue. Right, but they had a negative gross profit margin, which means, on paper, the costs. So they had $32 million in revenue and like say $35 million in cost. Like, hey guys. So I was like, guys, something's wrong here. They weren't even looking at their financials. I'm like, okay. I'm like, well, the only way that would happen there's a few reasons. Either like it could be a pricing issue and you're misquoting your jobs, but you guys seem pretty switched on about that. Maybe the administration side, like you're not invoicing all the work that you're actually doing, or maybe like costs are blowing out for reasons that you can't see, such as theft or like your suppliers are overcharging you or something like that. Because you're doing like 400 jobs a week. So you can't see all that. You need the systems to be able to inform that. And what I could tell them was like, hey, the way you're going, I was like, we got 6 months to fix this before you will die as a business. You cannot pay, you won't be able to pay your debts. So let's start trying. But good news is if we can start tweaking some things and let's look at where we start. It's prioritize and execute. Yeah. Cool. Like it ain't your overheads, it's job costs. Let's get in on that. And we found a whole heap of invoices first up that like weren't sent. Cool, we get that. That's a little win. Yeah. But ultimately, we found that one of the company they were operating in two different parts of the country, and there was one director here and one director up in another part. So there was a geographic disparity between them, and it turned out that one of the directors was not doing the right things, and it also turned out that there was money being stolen by one of their site, like the managers of one of their locations. He was literally taking, having materials ordered to site, having those organizing those materials to be stolen, sold for cash, and then reordering the materials. So their costs were doubling up.
Oh, so he's ordering them from his team that had stolen it.
Yeah, he would order the materials to site.
Yep. He would
arrange for them to be stolen, sold for cash, and then hey, stuff got stolen, so got to reorder it. So double cost on the job. It's like, that'll bleed you out. And then he was also taking the same people who stole the stuff, as well as the other staff. They were all in on it. They were taking them out on like fishing trips.
Oh, of course.
Out on the bay, all on company dollars, just because they were like hundreds of miles away from the main operation. They couldn't be seen, We brought a bookkeeper in to do like a forensic audit. She found that in 20 minutes.
The whole forensic auditing thing is fascinating to me.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Because you can't hide.
Nah. Well, dumb stuff like that you won't.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you can from an owner who isn't looking at their financials.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what, That's
correct. So it's like,
I get what you're saying. Yes, you can hide it from someone who's not looking at the financials. Yeah. But once you start opening up your financials...
you need to be a little bit more sophisticated. Get those.
Man.
To your point.
Yes.
With that business, it turned out that their situation was critical, and I had to sit them down and be like, guys, as we begin to uncover the truth, right? Because it turned out that your financials were wrong. Mm-hmm. What we're looking at here, that you're telling me is real, is not real. And as we begin to dig into it, the situation is getting worse. Mm-hmm. Guys, you don't have a viable business here. You actually need to, in Australia, we would call it a liquidator. I think in America, you call it like Chapter 11 bankruptcy or something like that. Yeah. So it's like, hey, you need to talk to a liquidator about like how you wind this company up, and you need to try and clear the most amount of debt that you can and try and protect yourself and the assets behind you. Because when you liquidate this thing, you've got multiple entities, and like a really good liquidator will try and build the best wall around that explosion. Because when you liquidate that thing, they're going to call in the debts, and you've got debts from other companies you owe money to that company. So as you liquidate that one, those debts are going to get called in.
Yeah.
Which means the contagion, the financial contagion will spread.
Yeah.
So if this one goes down, the other two go down. So a really good, if you can do it early, a liquidator may be able to, totally within the confines of the law, may be able to contain that explosion to just that entity.
That's ideal.
It's kind of like jumping on the grenade. You know? And what was hard was they didn't want to hear it. They did, but they didn't. And in the end, I ended up having to disengage with them.
And that's because of what got in the way? Their ego? Would you agree initially?
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay.
Yeah. And they are good guys.
Yeah, I mean, we all have egos.
Yeah.
Our
ego and an inability to detach. You know, because you've taken it this far, you've invested this thing, you've grown it from, that's, I don't judge them for that. That's such a tough one.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. But basically we ended up having to disengage and be like, hey, you need to speak to a liquidator. Here's a liquidator we know. Cool. Work with them or work with anyone. Don't care.
Yeah.
But like, we actually can't help you. And like, that's fairly rare. Usually we're able to help businesses, you know, begin moving in the right direction and build up.
What's the initial like kickoff for you to work with somebody? How does that work?
Yeah, so usually it's pretty much all off like word of mouth.
Yeah.
So we'll have a coffee with someone, and then from there if we're the right fit, we'll do like a scoping session with them. We call it that. We charge a few $100s for that and donate that all to charity. So we're kind of testing them out. Like if they don't want to spend a couple of $100 to understand their business, like maybe they're not going to be the right kind of client for us.
Yeah.
But out of that session, we get access to their financials, pop the hood, and actually show them how they're making profit, how they're making cash, speak to them about what their goals are, and then at a high level, provide them like with a roadmap about how to improve their performance relative to their goals. And if they can help themselves off the back of that, more power to them. That's it. Or we use the output of that session to inform what our engagement with them can be to help them. And what we look for is like, hey, great business you got. Look, if we were to tweak based on last year's figures, if we were to tweak price a little bit and, you know, reduce costs here a little bit and get paid a little bit quicker, you could make another $500,000. Okay. Well, we're going to charge you, say, $50,000 to try and execute that mission over a year. But I'm like, the only thing I can guarantee is that we'll be wrong. Because I can't guarantee that, like, that sounds good. But the moment you go and execute, you saw it at the FTX.
No, I know. That's why I'm laughing.
The moment you start the plan, it's already out the window.
Well, that's life. Every single day
that's
for
life,
everybody.
Right? But I'm like, hey, so let's say we're charging $50 to get a $500,000 uplift. We're aiming for that. Well, if we're half right, you just made, what, 5 times on your money?
Yeah.
In a year. And if you can learn the lessons, that'll compound out for the rest of your career.
And then you keep doing that. Yeah, that's unreal.
Yeah, and our contracts are not lock in. So it's like if one of the values of my company is value itself. So we are here to add more value than we take, period. Now, if you don't believe we're doing that, like you look me in the eye, you tell me that's not the case, I will give you your money back. Yeah. I've done that 3 times, you know. But you can terminate anytime you like. It's cool.
Yeah.
You know, so we're willing to back ourselves on that. That's generally how it works.
Awesome. What's the average, or what's the ideal client for you, like in regards to just size?
Yeah. So then we don't generally work with like sole operators because nothing against that, but they're just not at the size where the business case is warranted. Yeah. So yeah, they're usually guys who have, like if they're a trade service business, maybe electrical, excavation, plumbing, something like that, maybe they've got like 10, 15 guys working for them. In Australian dollar terms, they're maybe turning over 3, 4, 5 million. Okay. That starts to become interesting. But we've had clients that are turning over 50 million, 200 guys. Wow. I'm trying to fix that. Like we had one, that they had 3 entities, combined group turnover of 40 mil, 200 staff employed. and they had a CFO that was shifting profits from one entity to another because his brother was running operations in one of the entities, and they were trying to like feather that nest so he would get paid a bonus based on the increased profits there, but it was basically all fake. And then they turned around, like the genius of this, they then turned around to the owners and be like, hey, nice business you got. Like, so, you know, it'd be a real shame if like we were to leave. So how about you give us equity in that the businesses? Otherwise, like, you know, your operations would be severely hindered if we were to leave. They're thinking they're so irreplaceable.
Yeah.
Nah, mate. So it's like, they're just same day. Like, and credit. So this story, this happened when I was at the muster in Denver. They called me. And remember, there's a chapter in, I think it's in either Extreme Ownership or Dark Company Leadership. And Jocko's talking about a story where there's like, he talks about a scenario in a business where it's like game over for them. Mm-hmm. He's talking to a business exec and he's like, basically like, nah, sack them, call security, turn off their access.
Yeah.
And for them, it was game over. For someone inside the business, it was game on.
Yeah.
Same thing with these two guys.
Cool.
So I was talking to them at muster and it's like, no, sack them.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got walked. And when I came back from muster, they brought me in to sort of try and get control of that thing. And
wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Like they had a massive debt to the tax office.
Yeah.
And a negative profit margin, which means you're never going to pay it back. So, and they had 200 staff. So all those 200 staff, unbeknownst to them, they're all out of a job unless we get that profit margin up to where it needs to be. And I'm like, that's a level of tax debt that will get you media exposure. Like you will be on front page newspaper on that sort of stuff. So it's like, we can't contain this explosion.
And you guys turned that around.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. Yeah. We got them. So that went from negative 2% to, we got them pumping at about 30%. Yeah. And then, like they were doing so well, they got into trouble with the unions because they were too efficient. It was pretty funny.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's the kind of stuff that we do, okay. and that was simply like just like you teach it simple.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, hey guys, your guys on site are just not laying enough. They're being mismanaged. They're excellent at what they do. Mm-hmm. We just need 15% more output. Yeah. We could measure it. It's like that's all it is.
You shared a story at the muster about one of your clients, how something horrific had happened to their family. Obviously, we don't need the details of that person or the industry or business, but that story you shared was very impactful. Do you mind sharing that again?
The one that I shared at the FTX?
Yes. Yeah. About something happening to their family.
Yeah, yes. That was a really powerful one where, you know, and this is the kind of stuff we do. But yeah, so in Australia, there was a client whose family was directly impacted by the events in Israel on October 7. And as you could imagine, that rendered that business owner ineffective. Yeah. Combat ineffective, we might say.
Because, as you had said, just absolute barbaric, horrific acts.
Yeah.
To his family.
It's not like a car accident.
Yeah.
It's...
Yep.
Yeah. It's
evil.
Evil. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. It's out there. And, yeah. So they couldn't be involved in the business. They were pretty involved. They kind of had to be given their game. And we had to step up as a team like on October 8 to figure out a way to keep this business under control so that when they do get back in the game, ideally, you know, we haven't gone backwards. And that was it. So let's just, if we can hold here, that is an awesome outcome. So, hey guys, let's step up. We need everyone to take more ownership over their departments because you don't have the owner as a fallback now. Mm-hmm. It's now on you. So let's not go for growth.
Yep.
Let's just go for control.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the reason why I wanted you to share that, and we'll pull the thread on this a little bit more, is, you know, we often get asked like, well, how do I take ownership over things outside of my company and outside of my team? And technically, yes, I know they're your client, but like this is a situation where you guys are leading and influencing other teams to be able to do what they're doing.
Correct.
And, so explain to me that thought process and how you guys actually helped guide, coach, and lead these other leaders within this organization just to maintain, so that when the owner was able to come back and be present again and a part of their business, that it hadn't fallen apart. Because had it fallen apart, obviously that would have been devastating to him. He'd already experienced so much loss. But then from the standpoint of like all the other people connected to that company would have, it would have been a massive.
Correct. You're making a bad thing worse. So, what's interesting about it is like I ain't any of these people's boss. They don't have to do. I can't tell them to do anything.
Yeah.
You have to influence them. You have to build the relationship, and you have to build the trust. Now, fortunately, we laid that foundation over several years of working with this client. Yeah. So that's a key thing. But the way we do that is to, again, like I've said, tell the truth. We got the whole team together on basically October 8. Put them in. As you know, this has happened. It's going to be up to us to take control of this thing. We don't know for how long, right? So therefore, we're just going to go. Our aim is control. We're just going to keep executing to the best of our ability because, fact, we have enough work. It's okay.
Yeah.
All we got to do is execute that and get paid. So let's break that down. Right, we got to design it, we got to manufacture it, we got to install it. That's it. So one person running design, one person running manufacturing, one person running installation, and then we see the financial results of that coming through. So we could measure in the financials how on or off track those relevant departments were. And I would come in and catch up with them basically weekly or twice a week just to see, hey, how they're doing and what's going on. And usually it would be friction between departments. Hey, something's been designed incorrectly, so it can't be manufactured that way, or vice versa, or blah, 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 blah. And you just try and iron that out.
Okay.
Yeah, and that sort of brings the team together. It's as simple as that, but we could actually use the financials as a way for the entire team to see where they're at, to help them navigate and orient.
And that's why it's important to know the finances of your business.
Yeah.
Whether you know it yourself or you're being educated like you do, like this is what you do. You're like, hey, here's where you're at. Here's what it looks like. If somebody doesn't understand the finances of their business, like if they don't actually know their numbers, what's the likelihood they're going to be successful?
It's pure blind luck. I would argue that if you don't know your numbers, you will grow yourself into oblivion. Like you won't be.
Okay.
Long term, you won't be.
Yeah.
Short term gain, long term loss.
Yeah. Tactical win, strategic loss.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But the big thing I would say is like knowing your numbers and knowing your financials, it's like they are a massive, and in my experience, underutilized leadership tool. You can use them.
Yeah.
Right? Just like in the FTX, you got shooters there who they don't know what's going on. So what are they going to do? They're going to tell themselves their own story because they haven't been led or communicated to, and you'll see a team go veer wildly off the objective and go and do something. Yeah. It's hilarious to see. But that's what you'll see in the FTX. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
If you're not in the best financial position, if you don't communicate that to your team, they'll sniff it out. They're not stupid, And then what are they going to do? They're going to assume that it's even worse than it is.
Oh, yeah. That's
100%.
Yeah.
So when you tell them the truth, they're like, oh, okay, cool. And now you're giving them ownership. Hey, guys, I don't know how to solve this. I cannot design it. I can't manufacture it. And I can't install it, right? But what I can do is tell you the reality. And I'm like, hey, guys, what do you think?
Yeah. And that's why communication is absolutely critical. Because,
100%.
okay, you have this information or you don't have the information, but if you're not communicating these things to your team, then they're assuming things are a lot worse than they are. And they actually can't help you if they don't know that there's issues or problems or voids.
And it's got to be simple, clear, concise, like you say.
Yeah.
Because again, you're taking complex financial information and you're presenting it to a designer. So there's a way to do that. You have to figure out what, one I love, for instance, like traffic light systems, red, yellow, green. Cool. 1 in 10 males is colorblind. Traffic light system won't work. Pick your color palette. It's ineffective as a tool.
Yeah.
They can't see what's going on because it's all gray. So there's really, really cool design things that you can do to try and help people understand the financial consequences of things.
As a business owner, how often are you communicating with your team?
So to be clear, my business, the labor force of my business is me at this current stage.
Awesome.
What I rely on is what I would call a coalition of allies to make it happen.
Got it.
Because when we're coming into a business, I'm going to rely on insurance brokers, lawyers, accountants, bookkeepers,
So like you're the general contractor and you have a bunch of other subs.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
So I'll create the mission brief and then I'll basically be tasking these people with particular problems and working with them to help execute. But,
So I should have phrased that question differently. How often are you communicating with your team?
Extremely frequently.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, kind of on an as needs basis.
Cool.
Because there are certain things that are higher priority and certain things that are lower priority. So that require more or less communication. There's a so the same intern who like him and I went and got the photocopiers. He started a business, ended up with a dodgy director, ran it into the ground. They've just put it into administration. I'm working with him now. I was on the phone to him. Actually, I'll be on the phone to him later today to try and look at their cash flow over the next 6 weeks. Because if we can't prove to the administrator that we have sufficient cash flow to trade, they will liquidate the business. And he knows that this thing has value if it's run correctly.
Okay.
So, we're going to try and keep that thing alive and prove that case. Now, we will be communicating multiple times a week.
Yeah.
In that situation.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's what's required.
That's cool. What was your biggest takeaway from the FTX?
So the thing I wrapped up with was that I came to the realization that detachment for me is ultimately grounded in faith in something higher than yourself.
That's awesome.
That was a big thing for me.
Yeah.
There were many other sub takeaways. It's incredible. Another thing I thought, I emailed Heather about this. I put it in the survey form. I was sitting back and I was like, wow. Because after it, I just had to go back to the hotel and sort of digest it mentally and just process it, And I'm like, I don't know if I can say this, but so we ran 20 or 22 missions over 2 days.
12. But it seemed like 22.
Was it?
Yeah. But you
got
got
10 a day.
Nope. It felt like that because of the mission and then the debrief. The debriefs were longer than the missions.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
However many.
That what you just felt and we're trying to think through is a very common thing because it's so intense.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
It seems like different. And so because the debriefs are intense and you're thinking through and you're reflecting and you're reliving everything that you just did as we're talking through
Fair call. But what you're doing is, so that happens, in my mind, 20 times, in your mind, in reality, 12, doesn't matter. My point is, you've got in our FTX, there was 30 people? So every single time, you have the opportunity for 30 independent perspectives on what you did as well as what they did. So you're actually going through 30 perspectives over 12 times. 30 by 12 is 360 independent. So you have access to 360 assessments in 2 days.
Crazy.
Minimum.
And then you have the assessment from Cody, myself, and the FTX team.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, I got one hell of an assessment from you. That was pretty funny. But
it's because we care.
Indeed. But yeah, that was so. There's all these sub takeaways in there.
Yeah.
It's
I wanted you to share that takeaway because I remember you saying that, and and I know the story of what we're going to get into next. But you had a very significant life event happen with you and your wife.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for that faith aspect and you leading yourself and leading your wife, things could have been, not that they weren't bad, they got bad.
Yeah, they're about as bad as things get.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's always a way to make it worse. You
Yep.
know, hell is infinite in
Yep.
its depths.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's dive into what happened with your wife.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, as I was explaining to a couple of guys at the FTX, it's like look, it was 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And she had like sort of a minor health issue that we just couldn't seem to solve. And we had a really good doctor. And we tried all different kinds of drugs and tests. And eventually this doctor's just like, hey, you know what? Go and do a bone marrow biopsy. It's a little bit invasive. It's not too bad, but that will 100% tell us what's up. Okay, cool. We go and do that. It's like a little day procedure. And we do that, and straight away the surgeon's like, yeah, there's something wrong here. And we find out that she has, you know, give or take, they're never sure, but it's like, you got 12 months. Probably 6 months normal life, and then you're going to have 6 months of, it's a very, very bad way to go. It will be drawn out. You will lose your ability to move oxygen. You will not be able to stop bleeding, and you will lose your immune system all at the same time. And by the way, this is guaranteed. This is not, hey, if you smoke, you might get lung cancer. You know, watch out for that.
Yeah.
This is real, and we can even tell you the timing on it. There is no treatment available, but there is a cure. So we're like, okay, go on, you know. Yeah. We're like, well, okay, so the cure is bone marrow transplant. Okay. Well, to do that, you need to find someone who is enough of a genetic match to you that it'll work, which is usually a brother, sister, or perhaps a parent. Brother, sister is usually the best. But I'm not a doctor, so I'm going to get some of this stuff wrong. But look, my wife didn't have brothers and sisters. Her father was a potential option, but there's a very high chance of rejection. And the older you are, the kind of worse it is. So that was like a fallback. And also, a parent is not guaranteed to work either. Like not every parent can even do it. So it was told to us that your best chance of, this is uplifting, but the best chance of finding a bone marrow transplant is 1 in 20 million. So the search goes worldwide, and we, lo and behold, we found a match out of a community called Blood Bank in the Carolinas.
Wow.
And it was from a baby's umbilical cord blood. Now, in Australia, by and large, we burn that stuff. There are private organisations that will store it for you for a fee and so on and so forth, but it's not available to the public. And, like, to me, I really mean this. Like, you want to talk about the greatest country in the world. It's like, you don't need a president, any military or whatever. It's like, it's the value set. You think about the value set where, Americans got together and be like, hey, there's this thing. It can never be reproduced. It's valuable. We're going to save it, catalog it, map its DNA, store it, pay for all that with our own dollars. And by the way, we're going to open it up to the world just in case some stranger somewhere on the planet needs it. It's like, you guys did that. Wow. We can never repay that. So that came through. But even more than that, if you find a transplant, most people won't. If you find a transplant, 1 in 10 people who undergo the transplant procedure will not make it. They will either die during the intense transplant process, because they have to take you right to death's door and try and keep you alive in order for the new bone marrow to not be attacked by your existing immune system. So they literally put you in a bubble, they put you in a room you can't leave, so on and so forth. But so if you survive those first few days and your blood counts they start to rise, so it looks like it's latching and it's doing its thing. What can happen? You then go through that's just the start of the game, because there's an approximate 3, 4, 5, even 6 month window where it looks like you're recovering and it's working, and they don't know why, they can't see it coming, and there's nothing they can do about it, but it just stops working. And all of a sudden, all your blood counts crash and your organ failure, you're dead in like 24, 48 hours. So off the back of it, like it's a massive procedure, but then you end up going through this period where you're going through, like, we went through a half year where you're living life like hour by hour, you know. And I tell you what, like, that's rough.
Yeah.
You know. But what allowed us to get through was faith. We could detach from that situation because of faith in some sort of higher plan. We're like, hey, this is so crazy. God, we're just going to give this over to you. Like, this is in your hands, because there ain't anything we can do about this. You know, and thank you for the opportunity to, you know, try this. And yeah. And I tell you what, there's a gift in that. It's brutal. I describe it a bit like boot camp. Like, it was really cool, but I wouldn't do it again. You know, like there's some, but like out of it, you get this gratitude.
Yeah.
You know, if you can just see it, if you can kind of detach and see it, like, you ain't even worried about, there's a beautiful gift. You're not even worried about tomorrow, next week, doesn't matter. You're just focused in on the now. You're looking at her and you see the beauty in her, and you're just like, cool, we're good. You good right now? Cool, we're good.
Yeah.
1 hour's time, it could be different. We would have times where, like, you go to bed fine, and by the morning you're in the emergency department. Multiple times. And that trip to the emergency could be the last time you see them. You don't know. You just don't know. Now, eventually you get out of that and you start going from hours to days to weeks, fortnights, months, and now it's into perpetuity. They know that it won't come back, and it's good. But there are secondary issues that you need to deal with along the way. And they can you know, sort those out. That's sort of minor inconveniences, but you end up having to deal with the trauma, you know, all the residual kind of stuff you're going to have built from going through that. Yeah, like, there was so much, and we are still doing it to this day, that my wife and I had to, like, debrief on, you know, continuously to figure out how. Because it's like, how do you navigate that? You do the best you can.
Yeah.
But dichotomy of leadership, balance, yeah, like, we weren't always balanced.
No, there is no balance.
Oh. Well, I would describe it, like, particularly in the beginning, it's wild oscillations, right? And then you kind of figure it out along the way, and you get more balanced.
Yeah, you get into a rhythm.
Yeah, like in the beginning, you know, we set a pretty simple, clear, and concise plan. It's like, hey, it was her, me, and her father. It's like, okay, you focus on just, like, trying to get better. Father, you're going to handle, like, logistics and trying to get her to the hospital and back, and because there'll be a lot of that. I'll keep the home fires burning. Cool, go. You know, because a big thing in my mind was, like, she would feel infinitely worse if we started moving backwards financially as a result of her getting sick.
Yeah.
You know, so I was like, okay. And, like, in retrospect, I overplayed that hand.
Okay.
100%. For me, work ended up being, and I didn't know it at the time, like, for me, work ended up being like a bit of an outlet to deal with what the hell was going on, because it was the one thing you could control in an uncontrollable world. And I ended up spending more time at work than I should have. I wasn't totally absent, but on a spectrum, you know, I went too far and had to bring that back. And
because
what do you do?
But in your mind, you thought you were doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Totally.
And that's why sitting down and
doing the best I
talking
could.
and deep. Yes, you were.
Yeah.
when you're trying to find that balance, that's why communication is absolutely key. And like you said, there were things afterwards you had to keep debriefing and talking through. And had you done, I'm willing to bet, had you done a better job communicating and debriefing with your wife daily, you would have recognized, oh, she may not have told you, but you might have recognized, I'm working too much, or I'm gone too much.
100%.
Okay.
100%. And I hadn't come across the material that you guys teach at that point in time. But when I came across the extreme ownership principles and the book and dichotomy of leadership, all this stuff, I was like, oh, like this is cool. And the moment we started, I started trying to implement that in business and in life, everything started getting better.
Awesome.
And it really helped. It helped our marriage. It helped her recovery, I believe. It certainly helped me.
That's good.
And it really did help business as well. But there were a few things we overshot. But there's also a lot we got right. The very fact that we may not have won every engagement decisively, but like we won the war.
Heck yeah.
That's
awesome. So you flew in on Saturday.
Yep.
How was Sunday for you? Here at Lucas's awesome church.
Yeah, that was amazing. Thank you so much.
Let's talk about Sunday. Why was that such a good day? Special day?
We had a visitor from Australia. That was why.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool. Yeah. David had reached out to me after seeing some of the videos of you guys at Origin Jiu-Jitsu camp, or at the immersion camp.
Yeah.
And just some of the stuff that was going on there with the outreach that Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu was doing. And we just started talking about faith, and he was like, hey, so I'm coming in for the FTX. Is there a potential that rededicated my life, I want to get baptized? And I was like, you know what?
Oh, man.
There is one Sunday between when you're landing and when the FTX starts that's actually my birthday. So we could make this, work for everybody. JP is coming back into town for this, and so we'll get to hang with him a little bit. And so, David reached out, and then I'll let Tim kind of take the story from there. He showed up early, got to hang out with one of our guys, and take it on.
I flew into Dallas, hung out there downtown. That's interesting. And then
did you see the great big eyeball that we've got down there?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. Yeah.
No clue.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's cool. But
need some Visine.
Yeah, we hit up some barbecue and a few other things. It was cool.
Awesome.
Like Dallas. And took an Uber up and packed my stuff. Took an Uber up. Uber pulled in. I'm like, are we in the right place? I'm like, hang on, what's going on here? I'm thinking there's going to be a steeple or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, there it is. Yeah, right. And I sort of show up there with my suitcases, and lo and behold, your security guy comes out, and he's like, "Oh, are you the Australian?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's me," And he showed me around, and man, it was amazing. Thank you so much. Because for me, it was just such a it means, it's so simple, but it means so much. Like, to be able to do that in America, given the fact that my wife would not be alive without this country and the values that underpin it. That's really cool. And then, your church, Lucas, it was a very intimate affair. This is sort of what I was used to growing up as a kid, where my mum would take us to church. It was very, very similar. And it was just, I thank you for the opportunity to sort of recommit myself in that way, because the number of times that we experienced God's miracles through that process, time and time and time again, was just phenomenal, and that's why I wanted to do it. As I said to you, I was already baptized, but I did that as a baby, and I was like, no, I want to do something voluntarily.
And make it yours.
Yeah, and I kind of checked in with that. I mentioned that to my wife, and she, several months back in Australia, and she's like, "Are you really sure about that? Don't do it just off the cuff." Yeah. And I'm like, "Yeah, that's a good point." So I spoke to my mum about it too. She was, we'll get in a side story here, but she was trained to be a nun in Germany. So,
oh wow,
yeah. So Dad's like quintessential Aussie surfer. So they got married without even being able to speak to each other. So yeah, it's really cool. So she quit. She was going down the nun path, and then her cousin in Germany was head of the order. So,
Wow.
Yeah. So conversion dad. But yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I spoke to Mum about it, and she was like, "Yeah, cool. It's a good idea. I think you're doing it for the right reasons, and
That's awesome.
go get it done."
Yeah, that's what usually. I remember that's when I got baptized as a kid. Churches will do like baby dedications. You're dedicating the baby, but for me as a Christian, I got baptized when I was able to understand what it meant.
Yeah.
And it was hey, I want to get baptized. Like our daughters got baptized, and it was the same thing. They knew what it was. They wanted to get baptized. Yeah. And it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's awesome
that you made that decision. And I love just the wisdom of your wife. She's like, "Are you sure you're doing it for the right reasons?"
Yeah. And she wasn't trying to put me off.
No, not at all.
She was just,
That's a great thing that your wife did.
Yeah.
Oh, man. So you got baptized in the United States on Lucas's birthday.
Pretty cool.
Let's go. And I got to see you later. I had already met you, obviously, at the Denver Muster, but I got to meet up with you and see you that Sunday evening at kicking off the FTX. So that Sunday was a busy day for you, man.
That was a busy day.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah.
Surprised you woke up on
jet lag
Monday
was
that
real.
early. I couldn't imagine how that
I think
felt.
I was in the gym for 3 a.m. or something on Monday. Yeah,
Nice.
One of the other guys came in, from the FTX.
That's awesome.
And he just looked at me, and I'm looking at him, and I'm like, we're the only two idiots here,
But, we must be here for the same thing.
Might as well put this jet lag to use. So
that's it, man.
That's awesome, man. Well, I'm gonna close it out with some thoughts, and then I would just when we close it out, if you have any final thoughts or that you want to just leave our listeners with, I just want to, one, thank you for your time. And I know Lucas has some questions for you, so we'll dive into those before I close it out. But, man, you making the time to do this is awesome. You've got an incredible story. I know I learned a lot from today, and a lot of things to think about, as, with the other small businesses I'm a part of, it really opened up a lot of things for me to think about and for me to get alignment with my partners and for us to just understand as small business owners. And I think any listener that we have is going to be able to pull multiple takeaways from your episode. So I just want to say thank you. And,
Pleasure.
The cool thing is if people use those takeaways, the choice is theirs. Ultimately, knowledge is not power. It's the application of knowledge that allows us to do great things that can give us that sense of power and fulfillment of doing that. Taking action is the power, It's not the knowledge. The taking the action is the power. And so there will be people that listen to this episode that are going to take stuff away from it, implement it, and change their lives. So thank you for that. Lucas, I know you always have a lot of awesome questions.
Well,
what do you got,
that's
buddy?
pressure. So much pressure. There's something that you mentioned at the Q&A one night. We were talking about sort of reverse engineering ownership, and it was about a family that you had worked with and how you handled something where they were actually dealing with somebody who was malicious. We talk a lot about as long as it's not unethical, it's not immoral. What's the other one? Unethical, immoral, illegal, right? Naturally that'd be the one I would forget. But those are the things. If it's not any of those things, then at least give it a shot, right?
Totally.
You were put in a situation where somebody checked all of those boxes, and you had to go kind of outside of the group you were working with in order to build another relationship. Can you tell that story?
Sure. Yeah. So there were husband and wife team. They started their business, back in the 70s. They built it from nothing to something. At that point in time, there's roughly 200, maybe 210 staff. And they were dealing with a banker that was at best incompetent and at worst fraudulent. I would lean towards the fraudulent side, suggesting that, don't worry about an overdraft. If you just bounce a check, I'll push it through. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Wow. Yeah,
awesome.
I think we're past the incompetence.
We're entering into malevolence.
Yeah. And what was happening as a result of this is like you got a fundamentally solid business. It's cool. It's a good operation. Like they ended up, they sort of hit a bit of an iceberg, incurred some debt, and needed to work around this. And this is where that banker got kind of involved. And as a result of that, their incompetence, the credit department, which is detached from them, deliberately so, started to get nervous about this business because they were not being fed the right intelligence. They were not being fed the real picture. And they got nervous. And under the powers of the financial arrangement, if you breach certain covenants, they can call the loan in. And if they were to call this loan in, that would be game over for the business. And in this business, the owners had their house that they had paid off was secured by the loans of the business. It was cross-collateralized into those loans, as well as the properties of their children who were working inside the business. So if the business goes down, the family loses all the roofs over their head as well as everyone's out of a job. And that was on the cards here because of this banker. It wasn't anything they were doing, or their workers, or their product or service or anything like that. So lo and behold, one day, this gentleman shows up from asset management in the bank. And the owner's reaction is, oh, asset management. Oh, you're here to help me with my assets. No. He sees your loans. The bank views your liabilities as their asset, and they are coming in to collect on their asset. And he is here to assess one thing and one thing only. And he is looking at whether they continue to lend you money or they call it in. And he will lean naturally towards call it in because that's why he's here. Yeah. So we know that it's a bad idea for the bank to do that, but we need to prove it to them. So we had one opportunity to do that.
How much time did you have to prep for it?
About a week. Yeah, so it had to be simple, clear, and concise. And I got put into a meeting with the head of asset management for this bank. Again, met him in headquarters downtown, top of the building. We sat down and I ran him through a plan. What I actually did was just told him the story. And I created a presentation that, like, one of the slides, I'll never forget, was like a time series from when they started the business. And it on one side, on one axis, it was time between like the 70s to now, and it compared their revenue activity, their sales activity against like major world events, like 9/11 and the 80s stock market crash and
COVID and
whatever. Yeah. So just to show them, like, they've been through all this. It's like, they've been through this, they can survive this. Mm-hmm. And then we pulled out the financial models. And in this case, this guy knew financials, so we could show him quite technical stuff. And we're like 20 minutes into this 30-minute meeting, and he just stops me. He's like, man, why am I here? I'm like, dude, you should ask your banker that question. He's like, yeah. Like, what do you need? I'm like, well, what we need is like a stay of execution on all loan repayments for like 90 days. And if we can get a 12-month extension on the overdraft, that'd actually be enough to get us through. And like, we're in the clear. And with the contracts that we have locked in, this debt can be paid back in like 24, 36 months. It's no factor. He's like, man, done.
So coming to shut it down to what can I do for you?
Yeah. Because he could, again, see the truth.
He could see the truth.
He could see the truth.
The truth will set you free.
In a clear, concise way that made sense to him. And yeah. And, like about 2 years later, I get a text message from this client, and the husband and wife, one enjoyed champagne and one enjoyed red wine. So I got him like a really, really good bottle of champagne, a really, really good bottle of red wine. I'm like, we're going to open this when you get your house title back. Yes. And then lo and behold, like 2 years later, I get a text message for them. They've cracked the bottle of champagne. They got their house title, and they're like,
let's go.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, it's just like, that's so cool. And the crazy part is like, it was, another part of that story is like, it was incredibly important to compartmentalize that activity. That could not get out. to their employees. Otherwise, it would be game over.
Yeah, because like you said earlier, everyone sees the truth that's way worse, and all of a sudden it spreads like a cancer. People are self-sabotaging. People are leaving. They're jumping ship. They don't see the shoreline because they're below deck. Yet you guys are up at the top, and you're like, okay, we're almost there. There's a shoreline.
Like, dude, we're so close.
If we just keep going. But from their level, they're like, we're going to drown. Yeah. If I stay here, we're going to drown. And so them understanding, and so there is that aspect, like in companies and big organizations, like in the military, there is things I didn't know that were going on in the military. And it's not because I wasn't trusted. It was because it wasn't at a level that I could comprehend. And so what leaders have to do is be able to tell their people the truth, but also know what truth they can actually handle.
Correct.
There's also the aspect that the more of a relationship you have with your people, the more truth you can actually give them.
Correct. And the more nuance you can have in how you deliver it.
Because they trust you.
Correct.
Trust, respect, listen, influence, care. That's what a relationship is. That's what a relationship is composed of. Dude, I love that story. I'm glad that you asked that because I wanted to get to it earlier, and I was just like,
man. And it's one of those things, like you shared a statistic that night where you said with the 200 people that were part of that business, that if that business goes down, the likelihood that somebody in that organization ends up making a decision to take their own life is almost inevitable. There's almost a 100% chance that somebody that lost their job would do that. And I really want to make sure, because there is somebody that's listening right now that's on the fence, that they're in a situation where they're like, how transparent am I with the people around me of the fact that like our financials are not in the place that they're at, or we've got some decisions coming up that I'm worried about, and they're on the fence of whether or not they're going to tell their board about what's going on to course correct, and they don't understand the impact of it and like who that would have impacted. Right? If you are on the fence, go be honest. If the truth hurts, the answer is what? More truth, right? And so go do it. Go make that decision because you don't understand the impact that it's going to have on all of those other people that are connected to that. And man, when you share that story on Monday night, I was listening to that and I was like, man, that is one that so many people need to hear because it's a simple thing. Go get the help, go set things up, go make it right instead of, just hoping for the best. And then it ends up, how many people are affected and in what kind of ways is beyond your control. So thanks, man. Incredible. I appreciate that. So the one other one that I have is sort of just a nonsense question. Tell me about the Saints.
Hey. So
I hear they're the Dallas Cowboys of Australia. That they just haven't done anything in the last 30 years.
I don't know if the Dallas Cowboys are the same. So Aussie Rules footy. I bought Lucas a little gift of a little Aussie Rules football.
Super cool.
To get baptised, and it was only fitting that you got it for you for the Saints, which is a local team in Melbourne. You're in for a lifetime of disappointment. But it's okay.
Similar to the Cowboys.
I've been a Cowboys fan for 39 years. Right, was kind of born into it, and man, up until I was 10, we were gangbusters. But the last 29 years have just been it's seasonal disappointment. That's what it is.
What's crazy is though, like as I'm hearing you say, like this about me, I don't care about sports.
No, you don't care about sports.
Like I literally don't.
Me neither.
Yeah, I don't care about sports teams. Yeah. I enjoy the UFC, but I don't really even care about a lot of fighters. There's a few that I really enjoy.
You like
and
Bo?
There's a few that I like. But I've met Bo.
Right.
And I've met Michael Chandler. And and I've actually had conversations with those guys. You know what I mean?
Right.
But most fighters, I'm like, all right, cool. I respect what they're doing. That's awesome. But I don't get sucked into it. And I just think it's funny how people will get so emotional. And so it's like, man, can you imagine if you put the amount of energy that people put into knowing sports teams and players' stats? What if they put that same energy into knowing the Bible?
Yeah, or their financials. You can tell me like the running average of a particular player and how many and all
from
their
when
stats.
he was in high school, and then
like,
college, and as a pro, and you don't even know if your business is making money.
Yeah, I'm like,
That's not really that interesting to me.
Your business is a game. Your business is game. You got 4 quarters to win a game, and then it resets.
That's it.
Like,
Dang.
cool.
It's way more important than your fantasy team.
Dial in your stats. Yeah.
Or even beyond the fantasy team, like a team that you literally sit around and just watch. Like you have zero connection to the team.
Yep.
You have zero connection to the college. But it's just crazy that people get sucked into that. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with those people. It's that energy and effort is being wasted. Yeah. If you want to do that, cool. But if the other aspects of your life aren't where they need to be, maybe you should check your priorities.
Just sort yourself out.
If you're not financially independent and secure, maybe you put more energy into getting yourself financially independent and secure, whether it's paying down debt, saving more money, working more hours, working 2 jobs, working 3 jobs. You know,
see what it takes.
You know, I saw my parents working 2 to 3 jobs at a time.
Yeah.
I've done the same. Amanda's parents as well. You know, when Amanda was in high school, her dad had 3 jobs.
Yeah. Yeah, my parents were the same.
And so, you know, it's like, what's the priority? And so I just, I find that funny because you talked about the Cowboys, but the thing I was going to go to is like, it's been 29 years of just wah, wah, wah.
Bro, you don't have to tell me.
Yet somehow they're still able to ride off of that old legacy.
They are.
It's crazy.
Still the most valuable sports franchise in the world, having done nothing in the last 29 years.
Yes.
They wouldn't give me a McDonald's job, like flipping burgers, if I was doing what the Cowboys did over the last 29 years. No. It was like total incompetency. And here everybody's like, you know what? You know what would be really great? Spending $500 in tickets to a Cowboys game.
You know what? I'm going to pay you to work here, and it would be cool if you just ruined every single order you touched.
Well, I'll get 5 to 7 out of the next 17, right? And then I'll hurt my ankle and not show it. Now I'm getting too personal, but you know.
We're going to upset some of our listeners because there are some
right.
like actual diehard
Cowboys
fans.
I was one for years and years, and then I looked at it and I was like, this is too much energy.
And then you became an adult.
No, I got married.
Yeah,
that's what it was.
Exactly. You recognize maybe my efforts should be towards something productive.
She takes way more effort than what it took me as a single guy.
I was joking with my buddy about this, and he was like, well, and I'm like, hey, I'm not talking about you. I'm like, you personally are worth hundreds of millions of dollars. You could do that stuff now. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you've produced that freedom.
Yeah.
But anyways, I know that's going to be a rabbit hole of.
Yeah, no, it'll be good.
We'll see what the YouTube.
Looking forward to the comments on that. Yeah, for sure. All right. Thanks for opening up that door, David. My goodness.
Pleasure.
That's what we call extreme disownership.
Job done.
Right there. Extreme passing the buck.
All right. Hey, just want to thank you guys for all the support you guys give us, just for listening, sharing, subscribing, commenting. Like we mentioned the last few episodes, 1 million views on YouTube, over 100,000 downloads of the episodes is absolutely incredible. So we appreciate that. We appreciate you guys sharing these episodes when you watch it and or listen on YouTube, and then you copy and paste and send it to somebody, or you're listening to it on iTunes and Spotify, which we're on both those as well, and then you copy and paste and send that link to somebody to say, hey, you should check out this episode, or hey, at the 57-minute mark when Mark is talking about this, I think it made me think of you. When you do those little things, it has a massive return. And I just want to say thank you, because we've been able to spread the word. And, hey, man, we need the help. We need to keep doing it at a higher level, because we've been able to help stay true to what our mission statement was, of the alignment that Lucas and I had of like, hey, we want to build the kingdom. We want to provide value and bring exposure to Echelon Front. And that's what we've been able to do. And so it's pretty awesome. So
been pretty cool.
If you want to continue... If you want to continue following us on this journey, you can follow us on social media. I am at JP Dinnell. I can't. You get me so.
Just take a moment.
Yeah. The moment is my half-ace blade going into the side between his ribs. So if you want to follow us on social media, I am at JP Dinnell. That's 2 N's, 2 L's. Lucas is at Lucas Pinkard. Lucaspinkard. David is at David. I'm going to spell this out. So DAVID. MAHER _ @davidmaher_RBI. Again, that's DAVIDMAHER_RBI. And go to his website, rightbraininsights.com, which I love the creative, like the reasoning behind that, where you share with that earlier. It's awesome. Rightbraininsights.com. Make sure you're also checking out and following what we do at Echelon Front on social media. It's at Echelon Front. Website is echelonfront.com. That's ECHELONFRONT.com. Hope to see you guys at a future event, like an individual FTX or a muster or a battlefield or the council.
You got that one-day workship.
Yes.
Echelon Front workshop coming up
on December 3rd. December 3rd, Tuesday, December 3rd, here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We'll have the information in the show notes for you to be able to sign up for it. There's also a discount for our first responders. And so, anyways, looking forward to that event on Tuesday, December 3rd. Also, check out Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu. It's a ministry that I'm a part of on Instagram, or social media in general. It's at Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu _USA. Our website is JesusandJiujitsuUSA.com. We have a podcast as well that comes out every Tuesday, doing different live events every 4 to 6 weeks. We have one coming up on Saturday, November 16th, down in Dripping Springs at Leif Babin's gym, Stoic Jiu-Jitsu. He is also owners of that gym with Marcus and Lacey. Just incredible humans, incredible jiu-jitsu practitioners. Lacey just got her black belt recently, which was awesome to watch that video. So we will be doing a Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu event at Stoic Jiu-Jitsu down in Dripping Springs. The expert showing the technique is going to be Tim Kennedy, which I'm fired up about.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, so Tim Kennedy is given that instruction. Leif Babs is going to be giving his testimony, so we love that. Check it out. Also have our discipleship program that Isaac's been growing, and it's really cool to see the live events, how many people show up to it, and also they're tuning in live on Instagram. So if you follow us our Instagram page, you can also watch and listen and participate in those discipleship programs that he has going on.
It's pretty cool.
Also check out, we talked about it, Texas beef company I'm a part of called Little Cattle Co.
Get that beef.
Yeah, dog. Website is littlecattle.co. Littlecattle.co. We can deliver anywhere in the lower 48 states. We are a custom order beef company that allows you to order exactly what you want. I was actually talking with some of the guys from the FTX team about this, about how they like the fact that they can just order what they want and need for their family. Other companies do subscriptions, which is awesome. Those are great companies, great products as well. However, the value add that we have at Little Cattle Co. is you get to order whatever you want. So if you're going to have a barbecue with a bunch of friends over and you're like, hey, you know what? I want 10 ribeyes and 10 sirloins. You can do that. If it's just going to be you and your wife and you're like, hey, we're out of beef. Hey, let's order 3 pounds of ground beef and a tomahawk and 2 fillets. You can change it up every time. We also have our beef sticks. We also have our beef tallow products, as in like the body butter, the tallow cream, the lip balm. I've been having awesome reviews with that as well. It's really good for your skin. If you want to be a wholesaler for the beef sticks or beef tallow products, please send an email to amanda@littlecattle.co. Also, with the holidays coming up, we're starting to make some tweaks and shift towards that. You can also help show your customers and clients appreciation anytime throughout the year, especially in the holidays. With a custom order for Little Cattle Co., we will add custom notes or whatever you need us to add into those boxes of beef sticks, and tallow that we send to your people. Also check out On the Path Printing. We are fully up and running. I was actually there the other evening with Josh and David printing out a bunch of shirts. So we're On the Path Printing is up and running. So if you need an order of apparel printed for your company or an event, just send us a message on Instagram at On the Path Printing, and then we'll set up a call and conversation with you and just see if we are able to align with what you need. And if we can't provide what you need, we have a lot of friends in this industry that will make sure you get taken care of. Also, check out Bruiser Arms, a company Jocko, Leif, and I are a part of. Follow us on Instagram. It's at Bruiser Arms. Send us a message about the custom gear that we offer, different gear packages, and also training classes that we offer as well. As always, I just want to thank Origin and Jocko Fuel for the support they've given me over the years since I met them. The partnership they have with Jocko and now the partnership we have with Echelon Front is incredible. It's an incredible story what Peter Roberts and Amanda Roberts have done with Origin. And then, the OG team of Dedeco investing into it, and then Brian Littlefield helping grow the supplement side, and then partnering with Jocko and just seeing everything that is done it's absolutely incredible. So if you want to check out the absolute best jiu-jitsu gear and clothes that are 100% American made, go to originusa.com. Go to jockofuel.com to check out all their supplements, clean energy drinks, the hydrates that we've been enjoying on this show as well. So jockofuel.com, originusa.com, go check it out. I know we're getting ready to close it out. David, again, thank you for your time. Are there any final closing thoughts that you have for our listeners, my man?
Yeah, thank you so much, man. I got 3 written down. Okay. First off, I can't commend the team at Origin in particular enough about their mission trying to bring manufacturing back to the US. Mm-hmm. Hats off to you guys. We need more of that in the world, and in my own little way, we're trying to do that back in Australia as well. So that's great. Find a stockist down under. So yes. The other thing, we've spoken. So my second thought is we've spoken today about some financial stuff mm-hmm. and money and so on and so forth. It's not everything in life, but no. I really want to emphasize that there is no better investment you can make than investing in yourself. Mm. And I really want to thank you and the Echelon Front team for providing that investment opportunity to me through the FTX experience. Because it truly was one of the most remarkable opportunities and genuine and tangible and I would say accessible. It is not a military beatdown or anything like that. It is incredibly accessible and eminently practical and just a hell of an investment. Awesome. So it's such a great package. And yeah, the other thing I'd close out is just that power of detachment. It's a big part of what got my wife and I through the darkest of days, and linking that back into faith. Is detachment's a superpower, and if you power that detachment up by faith, I'm like, you got something real solid going on that'll see you through anything life can throw at you.
I love it. I appreciate that. And with that, I hope this episode has been a reminder to go out there, do the work that's needed, to put in the effort, and to never settle. This has been the JP Dinnell Podcast, episode 59.